To level up test prep, let's do some primary source document analysis. You'll see this on a lot of tests where your teacher will draw up two primary sources and usually frame them in a way to contrast one another. That's usually how those questions are set up. So if you see two documents like this, you already know there's some difference between them, and that's usually how those tests are set up. Okay, and because we're on YouTube, I'm not going to say this word right here because I don't want to get a strike on the channel. So I'm just letting you know that in advance. One of the key strategies in analyzing these documents is to not read the text first. I actually would never do that. I would immediately check out the source. That way I have the proper context to understand what I'm about to read. So, cornerstone speech by Alexander Stephens. He's the Vice President of the Confederacy, 1861. Okay, I know that this question wants me to think about the Civil War. And it looks like it wants me to understand the Southern perspective. Second inaugural address by Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, 1865. Okay, Civil War, but this time it wants me to understand the Northern perspective, or at least one perspective in the North. So, it put the vice president up against the president, so I think that's interesting. So you know these are very high-ranking profile people, so their words really mean a lot. Document 1. But not to be tedious in enumerating the numerous changes for the better, allow me to allude one other. Though last, not least, the new Constitution has put at rest forever all the agitating questions relating to our peculiar institution, African slavery as it exists amongst us, the proper status of the African in our form of civilization. This was the immediate cause of the late rupture and present revolution. Jefferson, in his forecast, had anticipated this as the rock upon which the old Union would split. He was right. What was conjecture with him is now a realized fact, but whether he fully comprehended the great truth upon which that rock stood and stands may be doubted. Okay. So, I can tell that this is going to be a pro-slavery perspective, which ties back to the Southern perspective. Now, I can automatically assume that this is going to be an anti-slavery statement. Even without having read it, just knowing that this took on a pro-slavery stance and that we're reading Abraham Lincoln, I can just automatically assume with great certainty this is going to be an anti-slavery comment. 1/8 of the whole population were colored slaves, not distributed generally over the Union, but localized in the southern part of it. These slaves constituted a peculiar and powerful interest. All knew that this interest was somehow the cause of the war. To strengthen, perpetuate, and extend this interest was the object for which the insurgents would rend the Union even by war, while the government claimed no right to do more than to restrict the territorial enlargement of it. So, I noticed there was a couple of words here that were repeated that I think will help illuminate our answer. I noticed the word peculiar institution came up, and here was used peculiar and interest, but we can just highlight all that. And I know that African Americans were referenced through the phrase colored slaves, through African slavery, and this word right here. I also noticed that the word cause was used twice, so cause of the war, and this was the immediate cause of the late rupture and present revolution. So I'm already seeing a lot of similarities between these documents, but again, they're contrasting one another. But that doesn't mean I can't answer both A and B. Okay, so describe one difference between these two statements. Well, let me start off with the difference first. Stephens believed slavery was acceptable, and that African Americans were to be rendered were to be enslaved. Okay. Lincoln, however, made no such claim. Okay. So this is a short passage, and if you just know Lincoln, you know that he doesn't believe that, but that's off just the context. But if you read the document, I can just state the omission here. Lincoln makes no such claim that African Americans should be enslaved. So I'm just going to color code this to make it easier to follow along. Okay, describe one similarity between these two statements. Okay, surprisingly, both leaders acknowledged slavery as a cause in the Civil War. Now, to add to the differences, you could say that Lincoln believed that they were insurgents, whereas Stevens believed that this was a revolution of sorts. So, and that was going to be important in how the war was fought and what constitutional interpretations led Lincoln to his decisions about how to treat the South seceding. Was it to be treated as insurgents or an insurrection, or was it to be treated as some sort of new nation? Okay, and there you have it. Oftentimes you'll have two documents contrasting each other. In both cases, they acknowledge slavery as a main cause in the war. They both refer to it as the peculiar interest or institution. However, while Stevens believed that slavery was the status fit for Africans, Lincoln made no such claim. And therefore, that's going to be our difference. Okay. Thanks for leveling up with me. See you in the next video.